Now, since the global lockdown, millions of people have turned to digital tools and methods for work, entertainment, and even shopping. Now, it is more urgent now more than ever before that businesses invest in digital transformation. Let's chat to Bluegrass Digital CEO Nick Durrant via Skype now as we unpack this a whole lot more. Nick, I'm fascinated by perhaps not Skype so much, but Zoom has certainly picked up. The value of Zoom is worth more than the 7 airlines in the United States combined. That just tells you the growth of technology. How far could it go from here?
Good afternoon. Yes, I think we've seen this already with other leading technologies like companies like Telsa being valued much more than traditional companies. I think this pandemic has certainly highlighted the fact for digital transformation within our lives and our day-to-day business needs. I think we've seen plenty of examples in the last few months of companies really having to pivot and look at new ways of attracting business.
Yeah, and trying to attract business though, how do you ensure that you aren't just left behind? Because some would say, fine, you can invest in technology, but how do you know you're investing in the right tech or in the right way of doing business for the future, if you want to call it that?
Well, I think that's one of the key challenges and probably why we see a lot of the statistics with IT projects and digital transformation projects showing us that really a lot of them do fail. And I think the technology is moving at such a swift rate these days. It's really finding the right partners, finding the right people, probably doing that due diligence and planning up front to ensure things like architecture, scalability, robustness are all there, and looking at the kind of key, probably main cloud platforms that will allow you to scale a bit like Microsoft Azure or AWS.
And trying to get to all of those, then the money spent on this does sort of pay for itself in future. I mean, some would say though that it's quite a lot that you have to take out. Does it reap the rewards?
Well, I think it's a never-ending journey. So I think everyone thinks it's a one-off process, but we've been transforming our lives for many decades, and the 4IR, the sort of industrial revolution that we're on, it's an evolving process. So I think the investment does pay off. I think a lot of companies get it right. Certainly, smaller businesses we're seeing having to be creative and coming up, as we've seen with the restaurant industry, for example, a lot of them having to become takeaway businesses and having to spin up e-commerce websites literally within a few weeks. And the technology is out there for everyone, those that on the lower end of the budget and those more enterprise clients.
Things like spectrum, though, are quite critical here, right? Because you'd be able to do so much more if government perhaps opened things up a whole lot.
Well, I think that's one of the key factors, probably that and skills. I think providing the various ways to connect to Zoom, as you mentioned earlier, or simply just to educate ourselves through online channels. I think that the one thing the pandemic has highlighted is the need for us to drive the cost down further. I think we've already seen some of that happen. We've seen sort of bandwidth double through service providers within this pandemic period, but I think the spectrum we do need is one thing that is holding us back in terms of reaching all our people.
Just reaching the right people. You spoke about price, which becomes very critical as well for consumers like you and I on a daily basis then as well. It hasn't gone down enough though, really, surely, at this point. But do we know what down enough is, I suppose, at this stage?
Well, I think we have such a diverse socioeconomic spectrum, from those that really can't afford to really connect for long periods of time, through pay-as-you-go data. I think comparing ourselves to the US and Europe and seeing how demand has picked up and prices have come down dramatically, our pricing has very come down very slowly over a longer period of time. So it is an area where connectivity through ISPs, through our data providers is an area where the government needs to really put a lot more pressure on those providers.
Yeah. Very finally then, Nick, would you call COVID-19 sort of the great equalizer? Because it is at a time like this where everybody is sort of looking for the same kind of needs, the need to just make sure that their business continues to forge ahead. And the one thing that they've all had to do is transform digitally. So has that certainly been the case for you?
I think what we've seen, we've in technology, and we've been prepared to work remotely and continue to operate. We have seen actually an influx of requests for new business ideas, startups, be it a mobile application or a B2B solution. So I think for a lot of businesses, many may not survive if they cannot really transform their business into this new digital way of working. I think certainly a lot of us have gained new skills in the last few months. Those that are not technically savvy have had to become that way. So it does, in some way, help us prepare for the future.
Yeah, certainly does help prepare for the future, as you say. Nick Durrant, thank you so much. Appreciate that as well then, that conversation. Certainly hope that a whole lot of businesses, including ourselves here at the SABC, have had to adjust quite phenomenally to that digital transformation as well. Nick Durrant is CEO of Bluegrass Digital. We'll continue to give you more news then right after the show.